King Thidrek spoke with Hildibrand and said that they would ride south through the Mundio mountains, and there was a forest that lay before them. And so, King Thidrek turned now into that forest. They got off their horses and took off the pack saddles. King Thidrek and Lady Herad remained behind in the forest, while Master Hildibrand rode out to a castle. This castle belonged to another Earl. He was called Hlodver, and he was already old. His son was young, and he was named Konrad. Hildibrand met a man in the forest who had come from the castle. And Hildibrand asked the man, "Who rules over this castle that I see here?" The man answered, "It is ruled by Hlodver and his son Konrad." Hildibrand asked, "What can you tell me about who is ruling over Bern?" And he answered, "That is Alibrand, the son of old Hildibrand." Hildibrand spoke and laughed. "How good a warrior is Alibrand, and what kind of a man is he?" The man from the castle answered, "Alibrand is the greatest of all fighters, and he is superior to all men in generosity and courtesy. He is grim and brave against his enemies, and he does not want to be compared to any man." Hildibrand rode with him and continued to speak. "You are certainly a good man. What further news can you tell me?" And the man answered, "Important news has been told, and it seems to me likely to be true that King Erminrek may be dead." Hildibrand answered, "That is important news, and it will not seem good to his friends." They now arrived below the castle. Hildibrand spoke. "Would you carry out an errand for me in the castle, good man? I do not wish to travel any further at the moment. Ask young Konrad to come to me, because he can get about better than his father." The man said he would carry out this errand. And when he came into the castle, he met Konrad and spoke to him. "My young lord Konrad, there is a man standing before the castle with a white beard, and he asked me to call for you, and he gave me his gold ring." Konrad was a modest man, and was ready to go when a foreigner sent him a message. He went out of the castle alone. Outside the castle gate stood Hildibrand. He greeted him and asked who he was. "I am called Konrad," he said, "and my father is called Hlodver. What is your name?" "I am called Hildibrand, the master of the Ylfings, if you have heard my name mentioned." Konrad went up to him and bade him most welcome of all men. He spoke, "Go with me into the house of my father. You are certainly most welcome here with us." Hildibrand answered, "I cannot go with you now. Can you tell me any news?" "I can tell you important news," said Konrad. "King Erminrek is dead." And Hildibrand replied, "Who is wearing his crown?" And Konrad answered, "That is unpleasant to tell. It is the evil dog Sivka Balerad." And Konrad then asked, "What news can you tell us? Where are you going?" And Hildibrand answered, "It is more probable that I can tell you some things you will not have heard. Elsung in Babylon has been killed, and King Thidrek has come to Amlungland." "God be praised," said Konrad, "because Alibrand, your son, has sent men north to Hunaland after King Thidrek, to tell him to come back to his kingdom. Alibrand certainly does not wish to give up his castle, nor any other place in Amlungland before Sivka. Sooner will all the Amlungs die than let Sivka rule over Bern. Hildibrand, good man, go with me into the castle to my father." Hildibrand said, "I must first ride out into the forest, because King Thidrek is waiting for me." And Konrad said, "Good friend, wait for me. I wish to tell my father this news." Konrad went into the castle to his father and said, "Sir, I have good and important news to tell you. King Thidrek of Bern has come to Amlungland with Hildibrand, our kinsman, and he is here before our castle and waits for me there." And when the Earl heard that, he stood up from his place and went out, and many knights went with him. And when they arrived before the castle, they met Hildibrand. Duke Hlodver went to him and recognized him and said, "Master Hildibrand, you shall be welcome here with us, and shall receive all the honor we can show you. But where is King Thidrek?" Hildibrand answered, "He is in the forest." And the Duke called out that his horses should be brought, and he would ride out to meet King Thidrek. At this moment, 7 men of the castle arrived, with wagons loaded with honey and wine. And the Earl had the wagons taken and driven into the forest along with the best provisions. They all rode along until they found King Thidrek. He had made himself a fire. Duke Hlodver and his son Konrad dismounted, and went before the king, and fell on their knees before him, and kissed his hands, and hailed him as their lord, King Thidrek of Bern. They offered themselves in support for whatever he wished to do. King Thidrek stood up and took them by the hand and bade them stand up and sit by him. Each asked the other the news. King Thidrek told them much about his journeys, and Duke Hlodver told him all that he knew. The Earl bade the king come home with him, but the king said that he wanted to remain in the forest for now. And Master Hildibrand will ride out to meet his son Alibrand, he said. Hildibrand now got ready, but King Thidrek did not want to go to the castle, because he had sworn an oath that he would never go into anyone else's dwelling before he was in his own castle. Master Hildibrand was now ready, and Konrad rode on the way with him. Konrad spoke to Hildibrand. If you meet your son, Alibrand, speak with him courteously and tell him you are his father. But if you do not do so, then it will be your death. And Hildibrand said, Good friend, what can you tell me? How can I recognize my son and distinguish him from other men? He has a white horse, said Konrad, and the nails in his shoes are of gold. His shield is white as flour, and they say castle painted on it. No man in the Amlungland is his equal, and you are now old, and will be unable to stand up against him. Hildibrand laughed and said, Even though Alibrand, my son, thinks himself to be a great man, and his bearing is so proud that he will not compare himself to other men, still, as old as I am, it can be that he will not tell me his name sooner than I will tell him mine. Hildibrand rode swiftly along the road to Bern. He had now come so far that he could see the town. A man rode there toward him with 2 dogs, and on the left hand he had a hawk. This man was tall in the saddle and sat nobly on his horse. He had a white horse, and his trappings were white, with an image of Bern with golden towers. Hildibrand rode to meet the man, and thought that the man might think no less of himself than Hildibrand did. And when Alibrand saw an armed man riding toward him, he rode valiantly toward him. And when he could not see that the man bowed at all before him, he became angry. It seemed that this man would fight with him. And so he tied his helmet tight, and put his shield before him, and set his spear in place, and showed his horse the spurs. When Hildibrand saw how Alibrand had prepared himself, he held his shield before him, and put his spear in place, and spurred his horse on, and rode against him boldly. Each put his spear through the other's shield so hard that both shields broke apart. The older man sprang immediately from his horse and drew his sword, and the younger did the same. They came together and fought until each was tired. They then put down their shields and leaned on them. And thus we come to the end of this part of the Thidrekssaga, in the midst of the events of the world-famous Lay of Hildebrand. So next time, back here, in the Hall of Sagenheim, we will find out who's going to win this battle. Until next time.